Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. Normally, we try and start by having a section for any questions or issues or PRs people want to discuss. If anyone's here trying to solve a problem or curious to talk or know anything, now is a great time to bring it up.
So perhaps we could talk about the proposal to add an AppArmor profile to harden Osquery's agent. Rachel's on the call. She was looking at that. But I was curious how people would deploy a thing like that, if it would be installed in a package or maintained in the repository with the code, or would it, where would it, I guess, where would it live?
I feel like, what do people imagine that as looking like? Because I'm used to AppArmor and similar being about really restricting things. And if, Osquery fundamentally is wants broad access everywhere. So like, what do people envision for an AppArmor profile?
Well, I know the goal is to reduce the impact of a potential compromise of the agent. Anything it doesn't need, it should give up. I know it would need a lot because of everything it does. So we would have to test and see what are any privileges we can lock down, if any, right? So I guess Rachel has started to look at this. I don't know if she has anything she could share yet.
Yeah, so so essentially how I structured it is everything has read access, and then whatever I tested, I went through all the tables, and tested for what each table needs to access, and then whatever it doesn't need, then it just doesn't have access to, essentially.
So is it possible to determine things that it will never need? And do you have any examples?
So I kind of just, I guess, exercised all of the tables, went through all of them that are available on Linux, and I guess I just kind of blindly assumed that it didn't really need access to anything else, but I could be wrong about that. So
specifically, what are some things that it would be relinquishing access to? Is it like, can you see in the profile what has not been used, what privileges could be given up?
Yeah, you can see all of the different locations that it has access to in there, and then you could make changes and add different ones as well.
So are these file system locations?
Yes. Oh yeah, sorry, they're file system locations.
Are there other kinds of protection or privilege that you can potentially do without?
What do you mean by that?
I don't know. Is AppArmor strictly a file system permission sandbox? This is a question for the room, because I'm really just asking as a yeah.
But one of the use cases we see for Osquery is around sort of broad file system access in terms of incident response or forensics. There's the file table and carves, and I don't know a priori what would you take off of that list?
That's something I wanted to post to the group. Yeah, but I also thought there were more types of sandbox access than just file system. Am I wrong in thinking that?
So I can see a potential use case for this, but I'm not sure what was the original design. We have code in Osquery where we drop privileges, which is not done to harden Osquery, but to protect the system against ourselves. Meaning, for example, we want to use the librpm or libdpkg to access the package database, and we drop privileges so that the library, without our consent, can change this data. I'm not sure how a armor could enforce this, and what happens if an attempt to break the rules. I mean, what would happen if you break the rule? We don't really want to terminate Osquery. So, as a first step, if it is possible to implement this so that it emulates what we are doing right now with the permissions by dropping them, then it could be a nice start.
I wonder if there's like a place where we start by just disallowing all write access or something, and assuming that if you want that, you can sort of override that or something. I'm very leery of trying to restrict OS. I love the idea of trying to harden an OSQuery deployment, but I also know that OSQuery has hooks everywhere, and it feels very hard to get a good handle on that.
Well, you
Yeah,
bring up write access. That's a good point, I think. Is there a use case for writing with the OSQuery core? I mean, I know, yes, extensions can do it.
OSQuery core writes into temp a lot because that's one of the strategies used for handling SQLite tables. I think there's some other places we create temp files, but offhand, I don't think OSQuery needs write access to like home or lib or user, any of the like system locations.
Okay, so it could be file system location specific write prevention. We're getting pretty well scoped, or I don't know if that decreases the advantage, but I still haven't heard of a permission yet in the discussion here that's not file based.
Are there network related ones?
Anyone here an AppArmor expert or have used it?
I used it once, and I'm trying to remember all the syntax for it. You might have some execution permission control. I'm not sure. It's been a while. But you might be able to like stop OSQuery from like spawning bash, which may be something we want to prevent from happening.
I mean, we have these OSQuery design principles. We could think of this as enforcing that contract.
Yeah, but you and I also know there are all kinds of places we violate them, either for historic or pragmatic reasons.
Well, then, and similarly, we can at least explicitly be transparent about our loopholes.
I'm not sure what is the use case, whether it is to enforce our own rules, or whether we want to use
the use
it
case
to prevent
is
exploitation.
the use case is elevation of privilege or other sort of process, hijacking attack that is hypothetical, but reducing the impact of that.
So there is someone on Slack who runs OSQuery as non-root with extra capabilities. I can't remember who. It's someone from one of the security companies runs OSQuery with like maybe libcap privileges and maybe something else. So I don't know if that's a viable path of sort of just running as non-root with the extra privileges granted.
Okay, well, it sounds like maybe we'll need to discuss this further when we have some concrete examples of things that we are thinking about locking down. Maybe if Rachel could propose the actual AppArmor profile into the blueprint issue, or we can discuss, individual line items or something that would be something more concrete to kind of give us a discussion point.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me.
I think if we do settle on one, it would be fine to stick it in the repo and ship it as part of packaging. Like that feels reasonable. I think my worry is just trying to create one that doesn't inadvertently block something.
Yeah, it would be interesting to know how to test something like this thoroughly enough. I mean, the table tests we have, I don't think are sufficient for discovering all of the potential needs,
I mean, I think the answer to testing something like this is you need richer test cases for every table.
Maybe some user testing, some extended user testing.
That's what we fall back on.
Yeah, well, Okay. Anything more from Rachel on this one? Anything you want to say?
No. I'll definitely make that blueprint issue. So that
I think, I think the issue we have is effectively a blueprint issue. It's just, kind of sharing more so we can kind of critique on or iterate on the idea.
Right.
I mean, doesn't AppArmor support so just like log exceptions or soft deny mode, right? So we could also just ship something incredibly open and kind of slowly try and whittle it down. Maybe that also just gives sites that have a more limited Osquery usage somewhere to hang that.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, AppArmor has like a complain mode where like the rules are just being logged, which ones are being violated and things like that. So we could like ship it with the complain mode turned on.
Yeah, it doesn't have to default to the hard deny at first.
Okay. Well, I'm excited that this got brought up, even if I think it's a hard problem. So thank you. Someone else has some questions here. Let's see.
Yeah, that's my question. So this issue started from the SQL constraints. So basically something has changed when it comes to joins and table constraints.
Yes.
Where can I read more about the nuances of those changes? Because some of the queries that I had are throwing the required column, in the where clause is missing error.
Or is this is this core tables or an extension?
Core table, like file table, users table, stuff like that.
I would probably suggest posting it to Slack and asking. There was a change a little while ago around the constraints, which might be this issue I haven't checked, where SQLite no longer passes columns that are not flagged in the as index or additional, I think, in the spec to the underlying implementation. But I don't think the file table should have that problem. So that's if you're running into like a missing column on the file table, it might just be a join problem or something. I'd probably suggest pasting it or pasting the SQL somewhere where folks can look at it.
Okay.
But I think I know we updated the docs about what the table spec column specifications mean, and at some point early in the maybe 4.2, 4.1, we stopped passing all the columns onto the underlying implementations. But again, this shouldn't really be an issue for the file table. So if it's the file table,
Hey Seth.
Yeah.
So right, I don't think there's a bug in Osquery here, but that warning that you're getting, Andres, is telling you that the table isn't working correctly. So we would like to look at the SQL, and I think we could make some suggestions. But if you want to try to debug this yourself, if you look into the code at the /specs and then the specific table that you're looking for, so specs and then I think utility and file, you'll see what columns are required, and that will give you some hints. If those columns aren't appearing inside the where clause, then it will lead to the error that you're seeing. I recognize that on our specs documentation on osquery.io, this could be added. Like there's no indication of this on there. I think that's just a change we would need to make to the JSON generation. But in any case, I think there is something wrong with the query. We want to look at it to help. And then if you make a new issue too, I can also try to help point you to where inside the code you could do this debugging yourself.
Yeah, I don't think there's a bug in Osquery. It is more likely me understanding of what has changed from to now between then. Left joins used to work, but now sometimes they don't, as I expect them to be from the SQL point of view.
You know what it also could be if you're doing a left join that just like some rows don't have the required data. And so you're getting output that is mostly complete and it's skipping the rows where it wouldn't make sense. So if you're joining data that did have a path to the file table and that row didn't have the path filled in, then the file table would complain that no path was provided to it.
Okay, yeah, okay. That could be a thing. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Any other questions? Cool. I think probably top agenda item is state of 440, which we had wanted to cut about a week ago and has dragged out a little bit. The main thing that we were waiting on was the Windows event batching. And then there's kind of been whatever else lands for this. Although I know Teddy's been busy adding more fixes.
So the event batching should be ready. I only have to push a small commit containing a txt file that explains how the test data has been generated. I'm going to do it now.
You could also do that in a follow-up PR if you want to merge this one right now. I know we have some flaky tests, so if you update the PR, you run the risk of getting bit by the CI flakiness.
Oh, I see. All right, then we can merge it and make a new PR.
Oh, we'll do that now.
Yeah, let's just merge it.
All right.
You need that follow-up PR in the 440 release?
I mean, it's just a txt file that explains how we can regenerate those files. We can do it whenever we want.
Okay. If you want it in the release, make sure it just gets tagged into the 440 milestone, and otherwise it'll just land when it lands.
Okay.
Okay. Then there's a small stack of things that are all labeled as maybe needing code review. Let's see, changelog doesn't need real code review. 6507, add Azure table specs to the CMake list. That sounds really simple. I bet we can make sure that merges today.
I can, sorry if I interrupting, but I was looking at those because there are the tests failing right now, especially in the Azure table ones. And they are failing because they are actually crashing. I had a bit of a look at it. I'm not sure exactly what's happening. I know that something fishy going on around the HTTP client constructor. Something is going awry in the initialization of the IO context or the deadline timer. There are several tests failing. I was looking specifically at the distributed tests. So, yeah, I'm not sure. So if I'm using obviously the master branch, they do not crash. I also made it run with application verifier, which is something like ASUN for Linux, and it seemed okay. Otherwise, it shows that if you correct the timer, the deadline timer has some internal field which is null. The service, well, I will write more on that issue, but basically, yeah, there's something not correctly when linking the Azure tables. I'm not sure why, because they shouldn't touch in any way that, but it's happening. And yeah, the other tables, I think they are failing for another test, which, well, yeah, we can talk about it later. Yeah.
Okay, so the Azure table specifically, you think are failing because there's something in an HTTP client and internal state, and it gets complicated.
Yeah, meaning I'm not. I don't know why it's that table. I at this point I fear also that there may be some global static initialization order that's changed when adding that library, and that gets something angry. Although Boost itself, Boost should not have anything that should be initialized statically and globally. So yeah, I'm not sure what's happening, though. Yeah, there's something wrong in the HTTP client or thereabouts.
Do you think this is a test thing, or do you think this is potentially actually impacting Osquery itself?
It's very hard to say because I cannot reproduce it. So if it was clearly if it was something wrong with HTTP client the HTTP client constructor, it would affect Osquery. Though the point is that when I use master without the that PR branch, it works and it doesn't. I mean, the construction is fine. The construction of that specific class. So I don't know. I'm puzzled of it.
It makes me not want to merge it over failing CI.
Yeah, just saying. I tried to investigate, but yeah, I couldn't.
I think this is a flaky. So the comment about not wanting to merge it over flaky CI, I think your diff that just changes the changelog also has this problem.
It is.
I'm convinced that's flaky CI.
Wait, let me see.
I'll go check. Yeah,
it might be another thing that. Yeah.
Stefano was saying though he thinks there may be multiple failures.
The other failure, actually, it's an issue I've already opened and multiple times. I forgot I wanted to briefly talk about it, but no, if I can find. I think it was about the uptime. So there's basically the test that fails most often is the processes tests, where the test checks for the start time of the process, and to do that, it compares it to the uptime of the machine. Though the problem is that on Windows, the uptime API we use does not return the same thing it does on Linux and macOS. So it is not, if I recall correctly, is not influenced by. So if it's a VM and the VM gets paused or shut down, it's not influenced by that. So the uptime is shorter because you have stopped the VM, while on Linux and macOS, instead, it takes the actual boot time and does a difference from it. And there are I've found the issue now, and there are many issues on choosing the right API on Windows to find the right answer, let's say. I've linked the issue, and basically the problem on Windows is that you can time or the boot time from VMI, from the registry in theory, from the APIs, and each of them has its own issues. And so basically my question was what kind of meaning we want to give to uptime when it is a VM, and also what we want to do with the Windows boot time concept, because Windows has also the fast startup feature, which changes when the boot time is updated. So if you do a fast startup, you don't get so you boot the machine, that's a fast boot up, but the boot time doesn't get updated. It's still the boot time of the first time it didn't boot with fast startup. So it's a bit involved. And
so like fast startup is like a hibernate in some ways. Or...
Yeah. And it doesn't influence, again, the boot time. So
that's a great question. Maybe a different. So is there a way to fix or squash this particular uptime error in tests, even if we sort of punt on answering the larger question?
So I'm actually reading the issue because I did wrote it quite a time ago. I think I had find a combination that works for everyone, but potentially changes what we are using, the meaning we are using right now, let's say. So
Is there
I think,
process
yeah, sorry,
that is restarted when you boot the machine again from a hibernation?
That's so. Yeah, one of the ways I've seen also Boost itself had this issue, and they were using actually the event viewer. So they were searching for an event about some service that was starting, although even that was not reliable and it was also slow. So
I feel like there are two questions here. One of them is that the meaning of uptime is potentially inconsistent across platforms. And what, if anything, do we do about trying to normalize Windows? And the second question is, how does this apply to the tests? And my gut sense is that the first question is not something we need to answer, because there's a lot of platform inconsistencies. And for the most part, you have to understand the platforms to make heads or tails of any of the data you get back. Like, I don't know that we have to define uptime so much as to say it means different things on different platforms. I don't know that we have to answer that right now. And I'm probably more concerned about, can we write a test that tests what we mean to test?
Yeah, I agree. Although I want to say that probably the current behavior of uptime, it's not documented. So maybe we could document it, because it's not that much used. Actually, it's exposed in some tables. So yeah, there you just have to know what. But I think we should at least document that it has that behavior, because again, you can choose other ways to give an uptime and give different answers. Test-wise, it's currently used to understand if the start time of the process makes sense, basically, because if it's between two times, so when the machine started and now, so that's why I don't know, because again, I was searching actually a way to directly have the boot time instead, because we are calculating the boot time from the uptime. Though again, it's not easy to find an answer even for the boot time on Windows. So yeah. I mean, we can. Yeah.
Can we set? So all we're trying to do is make sure we have a sane value for the process start time.
Yes.
And what process are we checking? Is it one that like the tests spawn?
I have to check. Just a second.
Because where I'm going with this is, can CMake just set an environmental variable with whatever the time the test run starts is?
You mean? Okay. I see. So see, we are closing the window basically. We are not using the boot time, but the start time of the.
Yeah, I mean, because if you're presumably just trying, the test is probably saying like, is this data legit or did it come back as like the epoch? You know, like 1977, and saying, well, you know, the test run started at noon on June 23rd. Did this process start on or after the test run? Seems.
Yeah. No, I'm looking at it right now. So yeah, probably we can reduce which processes are selected, because right now it's selecting all the processes and making that check on all the processes. So yeah, on the say you could say, although you can have a moment which is on top of 2 days, you could say that that it has to be the same day or things like that. But yeah, when you are running it on a local machine, you're not sure of the time. So yes, I guess we can change it to pass an environment variable and also check one of the processes that's we know it's started from the tests, though.
We can research and like try and follow up on this ticket, but it sounds like we should bludgeon this until we kind of figure out the right thing.
That being said, I think we can temporarily disable it since it's flaky, and so that it doesn't block the other PRs.
The other thing I'd maybe ask as we talk about this, do we want to cut 440 without these various things that might just be blocked on flaky tests?
What are you suggesting?
I'm asking if it's worth cutting 440 before trying to fix both the tests and get these merged, or if we should keep holding 440.
I'm concerned there are two very significant issues open, the two around serialization and caching. And I'll be a stick in the mud and say no 440 until those are merged.
I'm cool with that. I just want to ask the question so that we don't like do it by default.
I agree too. Again, we can just disable that processes test table tests and unblock those.
Okay, so then it sounds like we should disable the flaky test, rebase and rerun these things, and see where we are. It looks like a couple of them still need code review.
Yeah, to move fast to 6508, Stefano did a code review. It's a very small change. There are no new unit tests for this. In my mind, I can imagine what a new unit test will be. We can merge this now, and I can promise to add a unit test. If that test finds something, this is why it's important for me to do this tonight. If it finds something, then I'll add that as blocking. If it doesn't find something, then we can just, at our leisure, get that merged. The point of that test would just make sure that we don't regress here.
Why don't you merge it But if you and Stefano both
Yep.
think it's fine, I think it's fine. I'm good on that. And I probably also say that if we look at the test failures on something and can see it's the particular test we know is flaky, we should just merge over CI on those. It sounds like the one Stefano doesn't think is just that was 6507, which might actually not just be the flaky test.
Mhm.
So I only want to be sensitive to that.
Okay, 6507.
Those the Azure tables.
Okay.
But I think we probably actually have to look at what the CI failure is and trace it down to the test we know is flaky, and then move on. Which of these needs code review? Azure needs code review. That's probably pretty easy code review, although we'll end up blocked on tests for that one, I think. System proxy for AWS local authority. That's probably a pretty small PR too, I bet. So I think we can probably get that reviewed pretty easily. How's 6513? That one's a little bit bigger.
Sorry, I have to run to another meeting. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Yeah.
6513 is also blocked by the flaky test and needs a code review.
Yeah, I was wondering how the code review on that is, because that's a little bit deeper. So. Okay, 6512 looks fine to me.
Yeah, 6513, if anyone has some time, is quite test heavy. So I think you can just make sure there's no C++ and coding practices mistakes here. Review the assumptions of the test to make sure there's no edge cases that are not represented. But this is one that I'm really I don't know what the right word is. It needs to get landed before 440.
This is 6513. What
Yes.
So this is, sorry, just trying to read it quickly.
So
was this only doing cache hits on star selects, or is it did you shift population?
So table caching table caching happens only when you're executing queries on a schedule, and the goal is if you have several tables if you have several queries all using the same table, you can sort of coalesce the data fetching into just that table once, and then all queries use that sort of warm cache. It doesn't happen very often, but where it does, it's a pretty good performance win. Mm-hmm. Since that was added a long time ago. Since that had been added, we added a new feature which allowed some tables to optimize their fetches based on what columns were present in the query. And we never went back to update the caching implementation. So it's possible to hit this edge case where there's no cache, your schedule starts, the first query that executes, let's say the process table, only fetches one column. And then that is committed to the warm cache. A subsequent query against the processes table uses that, but expects all columns to be present. And so you have a data consistency problem. Mm-hmm. This fixes it so that the only data that's cacheable The only table selects that are cacheable are ones that have all columns present.
Okay, that makes sense. And the primary use case is in scheduled queries that all refer to the same underlying data.
Yes.
Okay.
So you can imagine, I just came up with a good example in my head. So you have a query in the schedule which selects from processes once and then goes and refetches from processes again. Let's say to create a hierarchy of parent-child PIDs. And so what we want to do is only fetch that data once and then keep reusing it.
Right. It just sort of reminds me that a while ago, we're looking at performance regressions on some of the tables. And like if you get the join wrong, you'll end up cross-joining against an expensive unindexed table, which doesn't end up hitting the query cache. And it sounds like that's somewhat intentional because there's no select star in play.
Yeah. So if you have those kind of really complex oddball tables and selects, then you can like warm up your cache. I don't recommend doing this, but yeah.
It's a common thing that has happened across many Osquery deployments. I know is people cross-joining against users, and we frequently run into a lack of indexing inside users being a problem and things. I think we have an open issue about Windows for that too. So, okay.
Yeah, that what you just mentioned only affects Windows.
Well, 4.0, it affected Mac on 4.0 too until we fixed it.
That's true.
So, okay. So I think, broadly speaking, our conclusion for 4.0 is that we should actually try and do all these things. It's worth holding. We should merge over the one that we know is flaky, and the ones that aren't flaky, we should actually, go forward with, and we should just disable the test. That seems like a tractable batch of stuff. So I don't know. Are there any other specific ones we want to talk about or call out right now? Because if not, we got some other exciting things that happened yesterday.
Last thing here. So what if the only ambiguous one here is the Azure tables. And I think that's depending on quite a few people. So we can just not have that land in 4.4.0.
I'm fine with that too. Like if we get, I don't know, should we just
untag it, and then if we untag it, then the remaining 3 are very actionable.
I think 6513 is probably the biggest one to stare at.
Any objections to me untagging 4.4.0? So is anyone, or untagging 4.4.0 from 6507? Is anyone really, really expecting the Azure tables to land in this release?
I'd say we don't usually commit that externally, so.
I'm in favor of removing it.
Okay. I will do that.
You want to get it or do you want me to?
I got it.
Cool. Okay. I assume you shoved it to 4.5.0 or something.
Yep.
So I think the only other thing in here that really has to happen is review on 6513. I don't think we got anywhere in the scheduler runner thread seg fault, right? That's still a thing. But I also assume that's been a thing for a little while, so can be a thing, can keep being a thing.
I think it's fixed by the things are landing right now. 6508,
Oh, okay, cool.
75% sure.
Okay. Well, even better. Okay, I don't see anything else in here that seems critical, and I'm always in favor of getting stuff out the door, so cool. Let's try and do that. Any other 440 things people want to talk about? Because WWDC happened yesterday.
Yeah, let's talk about it. Well, it's still happening, right?
It's going to happen for a while, and more information will be coming out. So I saw two pretty major things for us. One of them is, of course, there's a new OS, and that always means we get to see what doesn't work and what works and everything. Certainly my incredibly simple test of bringing up a beta Big Sur machine and installing the Collide endpoint agent, nothing didn't work, so initial signs are positive. I don't know if anyone else has had a chance to play with it. Samuel on Slack did, and he said the ASL table works. So at least initially, I don't feel super worried about Big Sur. Charvel, looks
Isn't
like
that
you unmuted.
good?
Sorry, what?
Isn't ASL deprecated and replaced with unified logging for a while?
Yes, but it still works.
Got it.
I think the other really big piece of news is that there is a new hardware platform coming. So for those of you who have somehow missed this, Apple is shifting to its own silicon, and we expect to see Apple Silicon Macs by year end, they said. Lots of speculation about whether this will be the entire product line or just the consumer product line, with Mac Pros still being Intel. Who knows? But I think we have some work ahead on kind of just what this means. I opened an issue.
I caught a slide where Apple said they have patch in the works or have already patched CMake and Boost to the new platform. So that's a good start. And the release notes say use CMake 3.18 or later.
I think we're using the bleeding edge CMake, so I think we're okay. But someone has tried building on this Big Sur platform? No. You only tried.
Two things. Big Sur is one thing, and Apple Silicon is another
I see.
thing.
I'm sorry for completing them. Got it.
I put them together. Sorry. Big Sur I haven't built on yet, but the binary we have built already runs fine. I haven't tested all the tables, of course, but at least at 10,000 feet, Big Sur is probably a non-issue for us. It'll be interesting to go poking around and discover exactly where it stops being a non-issue, but Big Sur is probably fine. Apple Silicon is a much bigger issue for us because this represents a new hardware platform. It's going to look a lot like the ARM64 platform, so probably we need to actually land the ARM64 stuff. And the other thing is that our build system will have to create fat binaries. The universal binaries are going to be a thing again.
That is going to be fun to CMake.
I started doing a little bit of digging, and what Apple says in not a lot of information yet is that Xcode should be able to compile for both platforms and bundle it into a universal binary, which implies to me that cross-compilation will be feasible. And I found the tool that it's using to stitch the things together. So I think it's probably tractable, but there's a lot. But until we get hardware, it's hard to kind of guess how this is going to play out. Apple did announce a developer early access program, and I requested that Osquery be in it. So I don't know if that'll come through or not. I imagine also that like my employer, probably Teddy's employer, probably Upticks, probably all of the major people are trying to be in those programs. I imagine Trail of Bits is as well. So hopefully like some of us will gain some access to an Apple Silicon dev machine.
Yeah, speaking about the code, assuming that the code is fine, there shouldn't be too many changes in the CMake to make it work on there. The only issue is the fat binary.
Yeah, I feel somewhat confident there yet, at least just because Apple seems to think that there's a story. There we go. I opened 6517 entirely to include the tiny snippet that I pulled out of some docs, which is the LIPO command, is a command that is what Xcode uses under the hood to stitch things together. So yeah, it'll be great. And it sounds like there's also updates on endpoint security too, so that'll be pretty exciting as well.
They added a few new events that you can capture. Nothing really groundbreaking, but some things related to extended attributes specifically. I saw that there was a bunch of events for that. Anything that changes or gets added with ACLs. Some file system stuff of like cloning a resource. And so they're trying to like maybe plug some gaps. So it looks like that's continuing to evolve. But specifically on Wednesday, they're supposed to post like a workshop or a session, something we want to be watching.
They already have a sample code out. It's kind of bare bones.
Oh yeah, that too. It's still bare bones. What are we, like 9 months into this?
It's like really bare bones. It's like has exec, and fork.
Alessandra's done a lot more with it already, and so is Charvel. So probably the bare bones example is a little bit elementary for our use, right?
Yep. And I think the session is not until day after or tomorrow. I don't have my time.
I think it's tomorrow. That's okay. I put a reminder up to check back.
Got it.
I don't.
Or yeah.
Sorry.
Sure.
Go on.
If you want to yield the mic, I just added something to the office hours doc because I'm super late. I wanted to just propose like a focus for Osquery development. I noticed at least myself have been like kind of all over the place looking at just kind of like what needs to be done and trying to make slow progress on things. And I feel like a focus or like a theme to our work would help get some milestones or accomplishments quicker. I recognize that for a lot of people that's not possible because you have like a roadmap driven by external factors, but the kind of theme that I was inferring from recent development is cloud first. Like a lot of the features we're looking at adding really assist users who are deploying inside cloud environments or like orchestrated environments. So does it make sense for us to say, hey, for the next half year or so, we're really going to focus on the use cases of these customers, kind of unify our development around cloud environments. That would include a lot of the namespace work, a lot of the, obviously, containerization work. And then, it could expand on things we're not thinking about yet, which is what other data is specific to cloud environments that like we don't have in Osquery right now. That in addition to the usual, like we need to fix bugs quickly and we want to make sure that data is as accurate as possible.
I think it makes sense. The only issue is that it would be nice to have user stories for this, some kind of usage pattern, so that I'm not an expert in cloud, so it is useful for me knowing what Osquery is missing when doing certain kind of deployments.
Absolutely.
One of the things we've tried a little bit to do that in the context of a release, to like declare a release to be vaguely focused on something. Are you proposing we do it for a longer period of time than a release?
Yes.
And you're thinking sort of, let's try and be more useful for clouds for the whole of that. Do you have thoughts about what that is? Like, most of the ones that come to mind to me are kind of just the containers and, Azure metadata. I don't know, Kubernetes. Like, what's in your head for that?
I think, yes, those are the knowns. Right now, we need those user stories to identify what else exists.
I think it's a great idea to focus on something. I think it probably helps drive it, so that's good. The only thing I'm concerned about is I don't have any sense of how much attention the Apple things are going to take up. Because I don't know how much time we're going to lose to porting to Apple Silicon updates for that. And like, is that going to be a small bug fix, or is that going to be like substantial work? I think it's great. Should we maybe just start like trying to write user stories into a ticket, into a place in the Osquery repo?
Yeah, maybe simmer on it for a bit and talk about it again in 2 weeks. And before we start doing work.
It'd be cool to have a corner of the Osquery repo where we sort of like wrote, user stories and thought about that.
I'm sure if you went searching for how to add project management to GitHub, you would find a lot of opportunity out there.
I'm sure that if I just put a PR up, it could get reviewed too.
Cool. See you, everyone. Thanks for hosting.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.